Cleveland Metro Hospital, 11:47 p.m. A man in a gray work jacket stands outside a hospital room, both hands pressed flat against the wall, because if he doesn't press them flat, they will not stop shaking. Through the glass, machines breathe for his daughter. A nurse asks him gently, "Sir, are you her father?" He doesn't answer right away, because the honest answer isn't a name she'd recognize. The honest answer is a name that used to make grown men in 3 states check their exits. He says only yes. 18 years ago, he buried that name in a hole so deep, he told himself even God couldn't dig it up. Tonight, he's about to start digging. Rosso's Shoe Repair sits between a laundromat and a closed video store on Fulton Avenue. The kind of street nobody photographs for postcards. The bell over the door has rung the same tune for 18 years. Daniel Rossi, Danny, to everyone who knows him, has resold half the boots on this block. He's 58, reading glasses on a chain, coffee that's always a little too strong. He whistles old Sinatra songs off-key on purpose because it makes his daughter roll her eyes when she visits. Mia Rosso is 24, an ER nurse at Cleveland Metro, sharp-tongued, soft-hearted, exhausted in the specific way only night shift nurses understand. She has her mother's eyes, the mother Daniel doesn't talk about, except on the anniversary of her death, when he closes the shop for 1 day every year, and nobody, not even Mia, knows exactly why. She doesn't know her father's real name was once spoken in courtrooms and headlines. She doesn't know he decided at 39 years old, standing over her mother's coffin, that the empire he built wasn't worth one more funeral. She just knows he makes bad coffee and worries too much when she works nights. Across town in a ballroom with more chandeliers than the entire block Daniel lives on, Senator Whitfield Cole is 3 minutes into a speech about family values that will raise $400,000 for his re-election campaign. He is 61, silver-haired, photographed constantly, beloved by people who have never had to ask him for a real favor. Bradley Cole had noticed her at a hospital charity gala 2 weeks earlier, complimented her. She declined his number, politely the way she declines 100 things a week. He is not used to being declined. What happens in the next 4 minutes will be described later only in a police report and in the careful, clinical language of an ER intake note. What matters for our story is this. Mia is found at 11:52 p.m. by a security guard doing rounds, and the ambulance that arrives 7 minutes later carries, without anyone in it realizing, the daughter of a man 3 counties won't say the real name of out loud. Daniel is asleep when the hospital calls. He is standing before the second ring finishes. He does not remember driving there. He remembers the fluorescent lights. He remembers a doctor with kind, tired eyes saying words like concussion and contusions and she's stable, but, and Daniel not hearing anything after but. He remembers pressing his hands flat against a wall so they would stop shaking. He does not yet know a name. He only knows that somewhere in this city, someone did this. And some old, cold part of him, a part he buried on the day of his wife's funeral, wrapped in a promise he made at her graveside, opens one eye. Detective Renata Ford has been on the force 14 years and has learned exactly when a case is going to go quiet. She sees the signs immediately. A name in the witness statement, Bradley Cole, that makes her captain's face change before he's even finished reading it. Ford doesn't slow down. But she also doesn't yet know that the case is about to be taken out of her hands entirely, not by the Coles, but by a much older, much quieter kind of power that's about to reassert itself. Tommy Ricci has cut hair on the same corner in Little Italy for 22 years. Before that, he drove a very different kind of car for a very different kind of employer. When the bell over his door rings at 6 a.m. before opening hours, and he sees who's standing there, the scissors nearly fall out of his hand. Dante doesn't start with violence. That was never how he worked, even in the old days. The men who worked for him used to say Dante Rosso never raised his voice, and never needed to. He starts with information. Sal Marchetti, his old underboss, now the very legitimate owner of a trucking and logistics company with 40 employees and a spotless tax record, meets him in a diner booth that hasn't changed in 20 years. Over the next several days, in ways so quiet they leave no fingerprints, Dante rebuilds a picture of Bradley Cole, the hit and run at 14, the assault charge at 21, settled with a check and a signed NDA. A pattern stretching back over a decade of a young man taught by his father's power that consequences are something that happen to other people. And beneath it all, the senator's own fortune, built not just on donors and speeches, but on decades-old deals with men Dante used to sit across the table from. Whitfield Cole is not just a father protecting his son, he is protecting a much older secret. Mia wakes up for the first time in 2 days. Daniel, still Daniel in this room, always Daniel in this room, is asleep in the chair beside her, still in yesterday's clothes. It is technically not a lie. He has no intention of ending up in a hospital chair. He has every intention of making sure certain other people end up somewhere much worse. Dante doesn't go after Bradley first. He goes after the check. The NDA from the assault case 5 years earlier had been signed by a young paralegal, Diane Ochoa, who left the senator's law firm shortly after, under pressure, with a severance agreement that came with a very clear message about her future employability if she ever talked. Dante finds her working retail in a strip mall in Parma. He doesn't threaten her. He does something far more effective. He offers her protection. This scene establishes Dante's method. He's not simply a man of violence. He's a strategist who understands that the most powerful weapon against a protected family is the truth they've spent decades burying. It takes 11 days for Whitfield Cole to feel the ground shift. A journalist he's known for years calls asking just a few questions about a 5-year-old settlement. His campaign donors start returning calls a day late instead of an hour early. And on a Thursday morning, his chief of staff walks in, holding a folder he found on his desk with no note. Just old surveillance photos of Bradley Cole entering a building in Cleveland the night of Mia's assault, 18 years earlier. Ruth Rosso, 34, dying not from violence but from an illness that no amount of power or money could out-negotiate, held her husband's hand in a hospital bed, very much like the one their daughter would occupy nearly 2 decades later. He kept that promise for 18 years. He became Daniel Rossi. He learned to fix shoes, he learned to whistle Sinatra off-key on purpose. He built an entire ordinary life, brick by brick, around one 6-year-old girl, so that the word Rosso would never once fall on her like a shadow. He did not know on the night he made that promise that keeping his daughter safe and keeping his daughter ignorant would one day become 2 different impossible things. Dante does not break into the Cole estate. He's invited, through a single message sent to the senator's private line, a number that shouldn't exist outside a very small circle. We should talk about Diane Ochoa, alone, tonight. Whitfield Cole meets him in his study because a public man's greatest fear is not violence, it's exposure. He doesn't recognize the shoe repairman at first, then he does, and something old and cold passes behind his eyes. Establishing the dead man's switch is a classic and effective suspense device. It removes the option of simply having Dante killed, raising the stakes into a battle of wits rather than only muscle. Dante's restraint is more powerful than an explosion of violence would be. It reveals character. He became a father who protects through control, not chaos. Whitfield Cole has spent 30 years building a life where he never has to choose between his family and his conscience, because he simply buys his way around the choice. For the first time, there is no check large enough. 3 days later, Bradley Cole turns himself in. His father's own attorneys, once weapons for cover-ups, now stand beside him as he does, not to protect him, but because Dante made sure the senator understood. A full, public, voluntary surrender was the only version of this story where the senator's career and his other children and everything else he'd built survived it all. Suspense payoff without needing to spell everything out for law enforcement characters. The audience knows exactly what happened. Letting the detective remain slightly in the dark preserves the power in the shadows. Tone of the mafia boss archetype. Mia is discharged 11 days after the assault. Bruises fading, but something in her still flinching at sudden movement, sudden sound. She's staying at her father's apartment above the shop while she heals. The apartment she grew up in, small and warm and smelling like leather and coffee. One night, unable to sleep, she comes downstairs and finds him at the workbench, not fixing a shoe, but cleaning something long and metal that she's never seen before, with the careful, practiced hands of the man who's done it 1,000 times. He doesn't hear her at first. When he turns, there's a full second, just one, where she sees something in his face that isn't her father. It's someone older, someone who has done this before. He sets the object down, and for the first time in 18 years, Daniel Rossi tells his daughter the truth, all of it. Chicago, the name, her mother's promise, the men he used to be responsible for, and the men who were once responsible to him. The reason Bradley Cole walked into a police station instead of walking free. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. He doesn't perform guilt. He simply tells her, plainly, the way he's told very few people anything in 18 years. This exchange delivers the emotional resolution. Forgiveness isn't demanded or forced, and the daughter's reaction is complex. Not simple approval, but understanding. This nuance is what elevates the story from pure action revenge into genuine drama with staying power. 6 months later, Senator Whitfield Cole does not run for re-election, citing family matters. Bradley Cole pleads guilty to 2 felony counts and will not see freedom again until he's well into his 40s. Diane Ochoa, safe and represented by one of the best civil attorneys in Ohio, settles a lawsuit that will let her never worry about rent again. And on Fulton Avenue, the bell over the door of Razzo's shoe repair still rings the same tune it always has. Daniel Rossi still resoles boots, still makes coffee too strong, still whistles Sinatra off-key on purpose. But some mornings now, his daughter sits behind the counter beside him before her shift. Not because she needs a place to kill time, but because now that she knows the whole of who he is, she finds she doesn't want to be anywhere else. Some men spend their whole lives running from who they used to be. Dante Rosso spent 18 years proving that the man he became, the father, the shoemaker, the quiet man on Fulton Avenue, was never a disguise at all. It was the truth he chose. And when the day finally came that his daughter needed him to be both men at once, he found out he'd never really had to choose between them. He just had to remember he could be both.